Hello everyone. In this video, we will learn how to register and log in users using Firebase Authentication. Firebase Authentication is a service provided by Google's Firebase platform. It allows us to add secure user authentication without the need to write and maintain our own authentication system. Firebase already has a industry standard security implemented, so creating our own authentication system will be like reinventing the wheel. It lets us use our existing accounts on platforms like Google, Facebook, or GitHub to sign up or sign in to any application. This eliminates the need for users to remember separate login credentials for each app. It simplifies the process of user authentication, also enhances the security of the application. To get started with Firebase, let's visit firebase.google.com. And you will need to log into Google, but I am already logged in. So I will just press get started. And once you're in this screen, you will need to add a new project. I already have mine added, but I will walk you through the process. So I will press add project to create a new project. And I will name it demo app. Let's continue. I don't want Google Analytics for this project, so I will disable this and press create project. And this will take some time. After your project is created, just press continue. And then press this web icon to create a new application. So add Firebase to your web app. All right. So we have to register our app. I will name my app, let's say HRMS, and then press register app. We don't need Firebase hosting for this application because we're not thinking of hosting at this point. And after this is done, you will receive some code to implement Firebase authentication in your project. So first you need to install Firebase in your project, and then you need this code. These keys are extremely important, and normally you don't want to show this to anyone else, but I am showing this to you because by the time this video will be live, this app will be deleted. So I will just copy this code and then I will get back to VS Code. One more thing before going back to VS Code is that if you accidentally close this tab and you lose your code, don't worry. You just need to go to project settings, and then below you will find this code. Here it is. Okay, so let's get back to VS Code and let's install Firebase in our project. So it will take some time. I will just fast forward from here. Firebase is installed in our project. Next, I want to create a firebase.js file inside the common folder. And I will paste all of the code that I received from Firebase in this file. Now, I'd like to import the getAuth function from Firebase Auth, and I will store it in a constant called auth. Okay, so auto import is not working. Let's import it manually. All right. So we have to import the getAuth function from Firebase Auth, and inside of this getAuth function, we have to pass the app as the argument. We also need to export the auth. Now, one more thing is that normally you don't want to expose these variables to anyone else but yourself. So if you host your code online in a platform like GitHub, then once you push your code online, then you will run the risk of exposing these variables to the world. So in order to prevent that, you have to create a .env file in the root of the project. So not in the source folder, but in the root. And inside of this .env file, I will paste all of this code. To import environment variables in Vite, you have to prefix them with a Vite underscore. Otherwise, you will get undefined. Now we have to convert all of these colons to equals, and we also need to remove these quotes, and we also need to remove the comma that we have at the end. I will show you a shortcut way of doing this. So I'm just going to go to the left, and then I will press Option Shift right arrow. So that will select all of this. I'll just press right arrow afterwards, and then I will press backspace to remove all of these colons, and then just replace it with a equal. And then after this, I will hold Command and Shift together, and then I will press the right arrow. This will take me to the end of this line, and then I will remove the comma and the quote in the end. So that is it. Now we have to replace all of these sensitive keys with the environment variable that I have just created. So back in the .env file, I will just press Option and Command together. Then I will press Option and Shift, then right arrow, and then I will copy all of them together. Then inside the Firebase config file, I will replace them all at the same time. So I will press Option and Command together again. Then I will press Option and Shift, then the right arrow. Then I will press Command and Shift together, and then I will press right arrow. So that will select all of this. So I will just write import.meta.env, then the name of the variable. So normally you use process.env, then the name of the variable, but in Vite you have to use import.meta.env. All right, so it is done. Now we have to ignore this .env file so we don't accidentally push this to GitHub. So inside of gitignore, I will add .env and then I will save. You can see that this has been dimmed, so you can understand that this is being ignored by Git. I will close this now. Next, we have to install another package called React Firebase Hooks. So on the browser, I will search React Firebase Hooks. What is this? Okay, and it's on the repository CS frequency, and just install this in the project. What this package will do is that it will make using Firebase a lot easier for us, because this will give us some pre-built hooks that we can use in our project. Now we have to create a user interface where we can log in or register our users. Let's go inside the router.jsx and create two new routes. So I will minimize this children, and below the root route, I will create two new routes. The first one will be called register, and it will have an element which is called also register. It is not created yet, but I will create it in a moment. And the second one will be called login, which will have a login element. Let's create this register and login component. So inside the routes folder, let's create register.jsx. Now let's import them. I will use auto import by VS Code and import once again. Now let's test if our routes are working or not. So back in the browser, I will go to /register. So register route is working. Let's go to login route. Login route is also working. In order to register or log in users, we will need a form, and inside the form we will require two input fields, one for the email and one for the password. We will also need a submit button to submit the form. To create the form, I will take help of Material UI. Inside the search box of Material UI, I will search for text field, and you will see that we have input fields here. You will find the documentation regarding text field in this link. So be sure to check all of this. Inside the register.jsx file, let's convert this div to container from Material UI. And this container component will need a max width prop, and let's give it a value of XS. Inside of this container, I will create a header for the form. Let's bring the typography component from Material UI, and inside I will give it a component of h1, and it will be a variant of h6 or h5. Okay, so this means that I want the component to be h1, but I want it to have a size like a h5. Inside of it, I will write register. I will create a box inside of this. So import it, and let's style this and give it a margin top of 8, and then display should be flex. Justify content should be center, and align items should be center as well. I will bring this typography component inside the box component. Below this typography, I will create another box for the form, and it will take a component prop, and I want the component to be a form. Then I want to give it a no validate prop because I want to disable the default HTML validation. I also want to style it a bit, so empty should be 1, just giving the form and this typography, this header, some space. That's all. Inside of this box, I want to create the email field first. So text field, and it's a self-closing tag, so we have to import it. Okay, so made the mistake. F should be capitalized, and the text field should have a margin of normal, and it should be full width, and it should have a name of email, and it should have a label of email address. Next, I want to create the password field, so another text field, and its name should be password. Its label should be password as well. It should have a margin of normal, just like before. Margin normal, and it should also be full width, just like before. So that is it. Now we need a submit button. So let's create a button. We have to import it. We just imported it automatically, so you can check up top. In your case, you may need to import manually. Inside the button, I will write register, and the type of the button should be submit, and this button will also be a full width button, and its variant should be contained. I want to give it some styling as well, so I want to give it some margin top and margin bottom. Let's check our browser, what we have achieved so far. Okay, so there is a slight problem. We have to fix that. So we haven't provided a flex direction to it. So let's provide a flex direction of column, and that should be fixed. Yes. Since this box is a form element, it has access to a onSubmit event, and we have to attach a function to this event. Let's call this function handle submit. Let's create this function. And this function will have a event parameter. We can write E as well to simplify. Now, by default, when we submit a form, our browser reloads. We don't want this default behavior, so we can prevent this by using a method called e.preventDefault. If we try to submit the form now, it no longer triggers a reload. We're calling our email field email, and we have given a password to the password field as name. Let's capture them. We can get the email with e.target.email.value, and for the password it will be e.target.password.value. If I console log both of them now, press register, we can see the value of the email and the password field. Let's go to the React Firebase hooks documentation and see how they're doing this authentication. So below, inside the authentication hooks, here you will find the list of hooks that React Firebase hooks gives us. And we can see that we have a hook called use create user with email and password. This is the hook we require to register a user. So I will click this and see how they're using it. Okay, so first we have to import it, and then we have to pass the auth to it, and then we have to pass the email and password inside the create email and password function as the arguments. So this looks easy. Let's implement this in our code. So the hook is called use create user with email and password, and it returns an array. So const array is equals to use create user with email and password. And we have to import this. For some reason, auto import is not working. So let's import it manually. Use create user with email and password from React Firebase hooks, and we have to import it from the auth. And let's destructure this. It gives us a function called create user with email and password, and we have to pass the email and password to this create user with email and password function as the argument. So create user with email and password, we have to use the email and password as its argument. Also, don't make the mistake of not passing auth inside this hook as an argument. Auth that we have created inside of Firebase and exported, we have to import it in the register.jsx file, and we have to pass the auth as the argument of this hook. Now, if we check our browser, so it has thrown an error. The reason is that let's get back to the Firebase console, and inside of build and then inside of authentication, we have not enabled any sign-in method yet. So we have to enable the email and password sign-in method and then hit save. So if we create a new user, it will appear here in this tab. So let's do it once again. And if we check here, we should see a new user. Yes, we've just created a new user. We can also get the user loading and the error from this array. So let's say I want to console log the user once it is available. So let's console log this. And it will not work because we are already logged in. So we will get error at this point. So let's delete this user, delete account, and let's create the user once again. So we can see the user object. All right, our registration is complete. It will be very convenient for the users if we redirect them to the home page after a successful registration. So back in the code, instead of console logging the user, let's create a use effect hook, and inside of this use effect hook, we will make the user the dependency, and then inside a if statement, if there is a user, we want to navigate to the home page. So React Router DOM gives us a use navigate hook, which gives us a navigate function imported automatically as well. And I will use this navigate function to redirect to the home page. We have to make the navigate a dependency of the use effect as well. So we have to put in the slash. I have forgot. So let's check if this works or not. I will go back to the Firebase console and delete the user once again. And let's just close this console. Let's register. Okay, so it is working. And now we have to log in our users. So I will visit the login route. You can see that it is empty. What I can do now is that I can copy everything that is inside the register.jsx and I can paste it inside the login.jsx, and then I can just change register to login. So change it to login below, and change the title to login as well, and the button should be login. So if I visit the browser again in the login route, we can see that we have a login form ready. We could have just reused this component, but for the simplicity of this tutorial, I avoided that. Now we need another button below this login button to log in users with a pop-up using a pre-existing Google account. So let's create this button. I will just copy this button and paste it below. The text for this button will be login with Google, and its variant should be or we can just use outlined. Let's visit the browser. We can see that everything is working fine. Let's visit the React Firebase hooks documentation and see how login functionality is implemented. So up top in the list of hooks, we can see that they have a hook called use sign in with email and password. This is what we require. If I click this, we can see that this hook gives me a function called sign in with email and password. And similar to the create user with email and password, we have to pass the email and password as the argument in this function. So it's exactly the same as the register. Let's implement this in our code. Back in the login.jsx, I will just delete this, and I will also delete the import for this. I will also delete the create user with email and password function. And currently I don't have any user, so I will just comment this part out and everything will be like before. This hook will also give us an array. Use sign in with email and password. And we have to pass the auth as the argument in this hook. And inside this hook, we will get the function sign in with email and password. So we have to pass the email and the password as the argument in this function. Password. I will also destructure the user, and I will console log this just below the handle submit function. Try to log in our browser. We did get the user object. Let's close the console, and back in the code, we can now uncomment this use effect block because we do have a user now. So back in the browser, if I try to log in now again to check if redirecting works, it is working fine. Now we want to log in with a pop-up using a pre-existing Google account. So back in the Firebase console, inside the sign-in methods, I will click the add new provider button and I will add Google as the provider. Okay, so we have to enable a support email, and if that is enabled, we can press save. So this will take some time, I guess. Okay, it's done. Now back in the code, we have another hook, and it will also give us an array. The hook is called use sign in with Google, and we also have to pass the auth in this hook as the argument. And inside, we will get a function called sign in with Google. And it will also give us a user, but we already have a user, so let's call it G user. And we want to execute this function when we click the login with Google button. So we have to attach it to a on-clicking event. Let's test whether this works or not. So back in our application, I will press login with Google and our pop-up just appeared. I'll select an account from here. Okay, so I think that worked. Let's add the G user beside the user. So If we have user or the G user, we will get redirected to the home page. I check now, back to the login, and let's log in with Google. Okay, so it is working. We can also log out. We know that this logout button is inside the root.jsx file. So let's go to the root.jsx file, and we will use another hook called useSignout, and just like before, it will return us an array. Let's import this, and we have to pass the auth inside of this hook as well. So import it and add it. Let's destructure this array, and inside this array we will get signout function. Now down below we have our logout button, and we need to create a onClick event, and we want to attach a function to this onClick event. So I will call this function handle logout. Up top I will create this function, so handle logout. Now this logout has to be inside a async function because this will return us a promise. So let's make this function asynchronous, and const success equals to, we have to await it because it returns a promise. And once the promise is returned, we want to alert the user. For now, you have been logged out. Let's test whether this works or not. So you have been logged out. We can test whether we actually logged out or not in a better way. So back in the code, I will use another hook, and like the previous ones, it also returns an array. This hook is called use auth state, and we also have to pass the auth inside of this hook as the argument. And what this hook does is that it gives us user loading an error at any time. I just require the user, so I'll just console log the user, and then I will visit the browser and inspect. Refresh. So for now we are getting null. Okay, so I will just remove this console log so you can understand better. Let's refresh. So we don't have any user currently and we're getting null. Let's go to the login page and login. I'll just use the login with popup for convenience. So we should, yes. So we got the user. As you can see, we got the user object. And if I log out, if I press log out now, you'll see that we get null once again. Now, if I refresh, you'll see that we have null. So logout is working perfectly. This was another long video and we have covered a lots of topic in this video. If you face any problem while following this video, please share it with us in the comments. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Visit latenightcoder.com to find courses related to React, Python, ethical hacking, and a lot more. That's it for this video. I will see you in the next one.